welcome back to Control Forward. Everyone talks about free speech, but here's the catch. What's often being defended isn't speech at all. It's cruelty. Free speech keeps you out of jail. Free cruelty pretends you get a pass for everything. Once you see the difference, the whole debate looks different. Liberty means the government can't throw you in prison just for your words. License is something else entirely. It's acting like every stage, every audience, every job should still be yours no matter what you say. Liberty protects you from prison. License pretends you're immune from consequences. And you can feel the gap every time someone says, "It's my free speech," when what they really want is a free ride. And you can feel that difference even more when you picture how it plays out in real life. Picture yourself in a pub. Would you say it out loud, knowing everyone could hear it? Would the room stay with you, or would it go quiet? That's the pub rule, the gut check we all instinctively have. Now scale it up. Put a camera in that pub, broadcast it to millions, and suddenly one remark becomes a rallying cry. That's the power rule. The bigger your megaphone, the bigger the ripple. What feels like just words in your mouth can become justification in someone else's hands. And those ripples, sometimes they don't just echo, they cause real harm. Speech isn't harmless just because it's words. It can wound, isolate, or incite. That's why the old example, yelling fire in a crowded theater, still matters. If there's no fire and I scream it anyway, that's not speech. That's endangerment. Courts once called it a clear and present danger. Today, the standard is sharper. Does it spark imminent, lawless action, panic, or violence right now? So if my words cause a stampede that injures people, that's not free speech. That's reckless harm. And once you see that, it's hard to pretend that all words are harmless just because they're spoken. But here's the tricky part. How do we tell the difference in real time when it's just speech, when it's sliding into cruelty or danger? That's where a quick gut check can help. The First Amendment protects you from government punishment for your words. That's liberty. But it doesn't guarantee a stage, a paycheck, or protection from consequences. Here's the bottom line. If the government can't jail you for it, it's protected speech. If your boss, your community, or your audience reacts, that's not jail, that's consequence. The Constitution draws the legal line. Society, though, draws the responsibility line. Here's a 3-step gut check before you speak. I call it check yourself before you wreck yourself. 1, intent. Am I sharing an idea or throwing a punch? 2, impact. Could this realistically spark harm or violence? And 3, reciprocity. If it were said to me or my family, would I hear honesty or would I hear cruelty? If you clear those 3 checks, you're in free speech territory. If not, that's the moment to pause. Check yourself before you wreck yourself. And that pause matters because even when your words are legally protected, life still carries consequences. The workplace is where that becomes impossible to ignore. Free speech protects you from the government, not your boss. If you say something your employer doesn't want tied to their brand, you can be fired. That can feel unfair, like if stakes are too high just for speaking. But there's a real difference. Losing a job for racist or sexist and so on attacks is not the same as losing a job for calling out a public figure. Cruelty and critique, they're not identical, even if people try to blur the lines. And that blur is exactly what we saw in the aftermath of Charlie Kirk's death. Charlie Kirk once said empathy was fake, even a weakness. Yet after his death, his allies demanded empathy at all costs. And yes, when someone dies, it's human to grieve, to want respect for the loss. That's natural. But here's the contradiction. Critics who spoke up, not celebrating violence, not cheering his death, just naming the harm in what he stood for, were accused of being heartless. Some even lost jobs for saying they disagreed with him. So empathy, which Kirk himself mocked, suddenly became mandatory for him while still being denied to the very people his words had harmed. This isn't empathy, it's a value. This isn't empathy as a value, it's empathy enforced as a shield. And that's where the real divide shows itself. This isn't about left versus right, it's about consistency. Free speech doesn't erase accountability. Empathy isn't real if it's only demanded for one side. Here's the difference that matters. Criticizing a legacy of cruelty is not mocking a death, it's accountability. Calling that censorship confuses the issue. Boundaries aren't muscles. That's that's why they let us argue ideas without pretending harm never happened. They keep the debate human instead of turning it into a free-for-all cruelty. And that takes us to the anchor point of it all. Being called out isn't censorship. Losing a stage isn't censorship. Censorship is when the state forces silence. Consequence is when a community sets boundaries. Free speech was never meant to be free cruelty because cruelty doesn't just test liberty, it erodes the trust that liberty depends on. It was never just about the left or the right or free speech. It's about us and how we choose to use our voices. If something in this episode made you pause or question yourself, that's okay. That pause is growth. It means you're paying attention. And if it ever feels too heavy or too uncomfortable, step back, take a breath, come back when you're ready. A pause isn't weakness. It's how conversations stay safe instead of spiraling out of control. Even if others aren't used to that pause, you can set that boundary. Be brave enough to talk about these things, but also be brave enough to slow down when you need to. That's how we keep the conversation going without tearing each other apart. I left reflection questions and references in the description below. Use them, share them, wrestle with them. And if you found this valuable, like, comment, subscribe, tap the bell so we can keep moving forward together. Let's control forward.